Imagine a vibrant discussion between people that includes both openness and critical thought in the pursuit of truth. The Purchasing Truth podcast is an experience, a journey, an exploration of the impact that negative messages in politics and the media have on our families, community, society, and nation. Join your hosts, Bill Stierle and Tom Hazard, to discover new concepts and language strategies that will reveal effective ways of establishing truth. This podcast series will tackle current events, leadership challenges, healthcare confusion, integrity in business, and many other areas that affect us all. Gain clarity and understanding of the various truth perspectives. Welcome to Purchasing Truth.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Purchasing Truth. I'm Tom Hazard, along with your host, Bill Stierle. And boy, Bill, I think that, as we're preparing for this episode, the phrase we've talked about in the past, truth perspective, really resonated. And there are several things that in some ways are shocking that are making us think about truth perspective and talking about it today on this show. And then there are maybe some aspects of it that are not so shocking at the same time. I think it's time for a little maybe scary honesty about truth perspective. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree, Tom. A lot of times we start these shows up when we kind of frame the issue and then get to the answer towards the end of the show. I'd like to start with the answer at the beginning, if that's okay this time. I think that having the level of empathy and compassion for the liars might be a good place to start, because when somebody is lying about something or somebody's trying to promote a alternative point of view, and the listener of that lie doesn't have time or the ability to get out of or check the lie that's being sent to them, they take it as a truth. And I was particularly taken this week by a interview of Russian citizens on the street where, hey, what do you think about those Ukrainians? And is it, are you on Putin with this? Oh yeah, they're violent. Those Ukrainians they're aggressive. They're Nazis. And it was 7 interviews in a row of different Russians talking about how bad and dangerous the Ukrainians were. And as I had to slow my brain down, because it started becoming defensive and protective of, that's not the truth. That's not the truth. That's not the truth. I had to go, well, for these people it is. I had to take a half step back. It's like, no, this is their truth. Their brains have been imprinted with something, just like my brain has been imprinted by something. And, that's the importance of this, is your brain can be paid to and buy into any imprint you want to choose it to take in.
Well, and as you told me about this video, which I hadn't seen, and by the way, for our listeners, we have this YouTube video in the blog post at purchasingtruth.com, so you could go check it out and see these, Russian citizens on the street. It's kind of like on the street reporting. It's not quite like jaywalking used to be from, Jay Leno's show, but I mean, it is a reporter on the street.
And similar.
Well, so, I mean, it wasn't meant to be a comedy, right? But
right.
It is definitely, some reporter going on the street to really document the unfiltered impression of these Russian citizens. And as you were telling me about that, I'm thinking, really, that's happening now? And on the one hand, I was surprised. And then I remember news reporting, even just from last night, that I saw about, the big news at this time of recording this is that, Russian forces have pulled back from the outskirts of Kyiv in Ukraine. Ukrainians have either pushed them out, taken it back, whatever you want to say. But Ukrainian forces are now in control of, the neighborhoods, the areas around Kyiv. And as they've gone back into there and see how many Ukrainian civilians have died and are just, their bodies are littering the streets, and there's some mass graves they've discovered. I mean, it seems indiscriminate killing of
Yeah.
Ukrainian civilians, which,
Yes.
is that a military target? I mean,
Yeah.
anyway, well, so the world is seeing these images now. These images are in all of the world outside of Russia, although I wonder how much of these images are being broadcast inside a country like China as well, that very much controls the state media that people are watching. And I'll come back to a example of that in a minute. But that I'm thinking about how are these people so oblivious when, it's so obvious to the rest of the world what's happening here. And then I'm like, no, it's not that shocking. This is Russia we're talking about, and Putin controls the state media and the narrative.
Right. Right. If we had 24/7 or 3 or 5 or 7 stations that were like Fox News, like that's actually what started to happen, is that there's Fox News and then there's more extreme beyond Fox News, the OANs and these other
Newsmax, yeah.
Newsmax, all these other verticals that are just waiting for people with extreme views to be amplified. And they have a viewership and a gravity, if to use not use a better word than that, but you get this attraction to the belief and the bias that fits what you think is true, rather than the pursuit of, hey, wait a minute, my mind is getting hijacked here a little bit. It's almost like we need a refresher course for children to question everything and to teach them how to find things, and to teach them
Yes.
how the internet is got some great advantages. I mean, within a couple of seconds, I was able to pull up that YouTube video of Russians on the street. I was going like, oh my God, I just had that. I saw it 2 days ago, and instantaneously it was there for me, by doing the search. At the same time, all I got to do is change a few keywords and I get a completely different story about, how the Ukrainians are aggressive. I'm going like, I don't think it's not showing itself on the map that way. It's really, really isn't. It's not showing itself. It's
well, boy, it is really scary, Bill, how people's beliefs inform their biases, rather, reinforce their the things they consume, and how their beliefs are formed. And when I think for you and me, a generation of people that grew up reading George Orwell's 1984 in high school and learning about, all controlling all the messaging and all that. I mean, it's easy for us to have the perspective and the belief that, yeah, it's not a stretch at all that Putin's controlling the media, and these people are believing whatever they're being told. Their information's being suppressed. I think, what is it? Putin has forbid state media from calling it a war in Ukraine, but instead calling it a special military action.
yeah, that's right. You got to name it the right thing. And everybody was up in arms when Trump said, oh, that was brilliant what he called it. He called it that we're in there, we're going to be peacekeepers. And everyone was going like, Trump, what are you doing? It's brilliant. And what people missed is that it was correct. Trump said something correct. It was brilliant that he messaged people into something that their brain could find acceptable. Just to see how weird that is. Yeah.
Brilliant is maybe an unfortunate choice of words, but you're right. It is. There's
From the marketing world,
right.
It's brilliant because it had stickability to it.
Oh no, I'm in agreement with
Yes.
you, Bill. That it's
But I wanted our listeners to get that too. Is that yes?
Yeah, I mean, brilliant. Although, I mean, I think maybe another way to label it would be, sinister or evil. I mean, it's definitely,
You really could do a sinister and evil on this one, that he tricked his population into engagement of beliefs that he has laid down for 22 years. I mean, that's where the perspective is adjusted.
Oh, you're right, Bill. I think that it is all Russian citizens have been going way back in the history of our show. And one of the foundational episodes, we talk about, the concept of tapping the elephant brain with messages over and over again that then really stick. And so over 22 years of Putin in charge, this same kind of messaging reinforced. And it actually reminds me, so I haven't in quite a while for a number of reasons. Part of it is my business dynamics changing and then the pandemic, but I used to travel a lot in mainland China, spent a lot of time there. And you can get CNN International on the TV in pretty much any hotel room in China. However, once in a while, when a certain story comes on, all of a sudden the TV goes black. And at first you're like, something wrong with the signal, something wrong with the TV. And then it comes back after whatever story was about to be aired is off. And it's because the state in China is censoring the information that is being broadcast on their television stations, and anything that they deem not in alignment with the narrative that China wants its citizens to be exposed to, they block. And so you can imagine when that sort of stuff happens, the truth has a hard time coming out.
It does. It does. The just reinforced talking points was the thing that was really shocking to me with watching the Russian man on the street, women on the street, being that the Ukrainians were the aggressors, that they were Nazis, that Ukraine is not a real country. It came out of the person's mouth. I'm going like, what have they been doing for the last 30 years? And the agreement was that they could become a real country by giving up their nukes. That was the whole thing, that their sovereignty would, be things. But now all of a sudden that is not, that every country has got to at least have, 1 to 5 nukes to, prevent themselves from being invaded by a crazy guy, and let alone getting the crazy guy to be in charge of the nukes. And he looked like a reasonable guy in the beginning, but now he's a crazy guy at the end. And he's, and that brings us into things like term limits and, and not having somebody to be in charge for their entire life.
And also then you can go down the rabbit hole of, supposedly Putin's been elected. However, elections in Russia are really pretty tightly controlled. He is essentially a dictator, an authoritarian, and obviously, he controls the messaging and is able to stay in power. And anyway, it's really in some ways disheartening, but at the same time, actually not all that shocking to see how truth suffers in that environment and doesn't really see the light of day. But what's really scary, Bill, some scary honesty here, is that even in the United States, which is a society that has freedom of speech, freedom of the press, we see messages being
Oh,
broadcast to people that are doing the same thing
same
that's
thing.
happening to these Russian citizens on the
S-
street.
Same thing. Same thing. You and I have on our on this podcast, we have shown clips of comedians like Jordan Klepper and those, different celebrities interviewing people on the street and checking their facts, checking their imprinting, checking their beliefs. Samantha Bee is another one that goes out and interviews people, and all of her team goes out and asks these questions to, and they're putting together these beliefs and they're editing it for humor,
Right.
which creates the separation, because all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, they're crazy people over there, and it serves their show. But you could see how that easily could be, it serves the state to believe. It serves a certain population, a politician to believe this. And those beliefs and biases and fallacies, all you got to do is get a saturation of him, and the extreme information can land on a person's head that is not really true. There are, and that's really, really unsettling, really,
Well,
really is.
and we keep seeing the you know the the pendulum of truth, getting swung way off center. There was an article I just saw where there was a rally that happened, a Trump rally just recently, and a U.S. Republican representative from Michigan was so wanting to meet the former President Trump's needs for acknowledgement,
Yes.
recognition, and to show him loyalty,
Yes.
that she falsely boasted to this crowd of adoring Trump fans
10,000 people sitting right there.
that that President Trump is the one that ordered the raid to kill Osama bin Laden. I mean, seriously, that she actually said that former President Trump, and the quote, I'm using air quotes here, is that Trump caught Osama bin Laden. And I mean, anybody with a smartphone and Google, who by the way might have been for some reason too young to remember it, if for those people that are too young and weren't there, didn't remember seeing the news when it happened, it's very easy to see when that happened, just the date of it, and realize, oh, that was when Obama was president. And it's not like it's when it was Obama was president just before Trump took office. No, it was actually in Obama's first term as president in 2011 or 12, early in 2012. Still, it was before he was reelected. Truth is there if people want to seek it out. But
The
I mean,
bias
to
won't
me,
let
that
them.
was so shocking that
Yeah.
someone would make a claim of something so obvious to disprove, so obviously false.
Yeah, the term fake news has done a great damage to us, because fake news is anything that is not in alignment with my bias, my fallacy, or my fixed belief. And if it's not aligned with it, I get to call it fake news, and I get to be right. And there are images of news that do have a rating of fakeness to it, right? But that's not what the brain does with it. The brain creates doubt and skepticism with it, is what it does. So it creates the feeling of doubt or skepticism about the elements of truth, because nobody's it's hard to fight for the truth and go like, I could see your point of view over there. I can have some compassion and empathy for how your beliefs are sitting there. Um, and the scary honesty that bringing bad news early is that belief bias doesn't have, evidence around it. We have evidence around those, and those evidences are accepted. And is it okay to question evidence? Yeah, there's people that go back and retry court cases on evidence and overturn those court cases because the evidence was not collected, or there was another piece of evidence that showed that the person wasn't there. And so it's okay to um, re-examine things that we agreed upon truth. It's okay to re-examine it. This is not about ignoring willingness to poke a stick at any form of information that has been fed on the right or the left. It's an encouragement to keep doing that, and don't let your brain settle on certain biases and fallacies that need to be adjusted. And I think that you had mentioned that there was a researcher that had done some research on Fox News and NBC. That thing is worth talking about now as we're coming through this episode, because we have to really check in with ourselves.
Yeah, there was a university study done, and actually some articles have just come out about it very recently now. I mean, in April 2022, and the study was done in September 2020, so a couple months before the most recent presidential election in the United States. And the university study paid a large group of Fox News watchers $15 an hour to watch CNN for 7 hours a week during specific times of day. So, I mean, they couldn't like cherry pick, different times of day to watch it. They had to watch it at certain times of day. And they did this for a month. So for, essentially 4 weeks straight. And what they found is that these people that, were regular Fox News watchers and had their own, belief biases that were formed by Fox News, and they weren't being shown certain types of information. Fox ends up, amplifying certain news and
Right.
minimizing other news. They said that they were, after watching CNN, after doing this study, they were more likely to believe that people suffer from long COVID, for example. They were more likely to believe that many foreign countries did better job than the US of controlling the virus. They were more likely to support voting by mail, and less likely to believe that supporters of then candidate Joe Biden were happy when police officers got shot. That to me was a very telling one. They
Yeah.
were also less likely to say it's more important for the president to focus on containing violent protesters than on the coronavirus. And sort of the last shocker one, they were also a lot less likely to agree that if Biden were elected, we'll see many more police get shot by Black Lives Matter activists. So obviously you can see a lot of the narratives and messaging that Fox News was, feeding their viewers, was forming a lot of biases that then, when they were required to or incentivized enough by paying them to
Right.
watch a different information source, that the pendulum swings back from that extreme, and they're less likely to believe a lot of those things that are, I would say, uh, don't have the strongest alignment with truth.
Yes, that's the hard part about it. And Tom, the reinforcement, it always brings me back to World War II, when Eisenhower, I believe, came upon Nazi concentration camp, and and saw, all the death and everything, and and he said, okay, photographers, I want hundreds of thousands of pictures. I want to take pictures, all this stuff. And then in the nearby town, he had the military line all the citizens up and march them through the camp so they could see it. It's like, we're creating, evidence, and people to have firsthand experiences of reality, not reality kept over here, but reality kept in perspective of this thing. And where is that moment going to take place for not just the Russian citizens that need to march through Mariupol, or the outskirts of Kyiv, where all those things, where are you going to get that moment where those people that have been indoctrinated into a belief structure, and it doesn't mean that, Tom, you and I are sitting with 100% of the truth. We're just taking those images, and we're taking those stories as a truth. Now, are those stories being lifted and amplified a certain way? Yeah, but it's so many of the images that are coming out of it's all of these different pieces of evidence that are accumulating, that allows our brain to say, yeah, it's happening, even though we are not seeing it firsthand. But to a person that has been propagandized, that their beliefs, bias, and fallacies have been reinforced, it a lot of times it takes that saturating moment. And will these images get through, or are they going to be discarded as fake news inside the loyal Russian believer? And it's unsettling to say the loyal Russian believer is going to reject, those things, because the word fake has permeated inside our lexicon as a word that anything that now equals anything that's outside our bias, beliefs, and fallacies. And that's the scary honesty that we're sitting with it from our episode right now.
It really is scary honesty, but I think you're right, Bill. If you look at World War II, I mean, I think, we all grew up learning of this history after it's all over, right? And Hitler was an aggressor, and kept taking over other countries, expanding his territory, and ultimately, Japan attacking the United States brought us into the war, and we're fighting back to try to liberate these countries that they've taken over. And I don't think at the time during the war, everybody even really understood how bad the extermination of Jews was, that they were being, until the end, and it gets revealed. So even we maybe didn't understand the full scope of it. And this is, it's scary on the one hand. On the other hand, it's really helpful to understand how people's beliefs are formed, and restricting the information is the easiest way to purchase truth.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah,
and that's part of a big problem of what we're facing right now with Russia and this Ukraine crisis. The rest of the world can see it, where they have free flow of information. The Russian citizen, average citizen, is not seeing it.
They really aren't. And that's the thing it's a very, very painful, it's going to be a very painful, 10 years right now for the Russian people. Very, very painful 10 years, because, when you get a dictator that's in charge, because even the oligarchs are calling him a dictator now. there was all these oligarchs say, it's not really that. It's really he's just a dictator, and we're all falling in line. It's like, oh man, they called him that. I didn't decide me calling him that. They called him that. And anybody that crosses the person, then their life is threatened or eliminated, which is really it's really that you can't speak truth to power. Now, we have our own problems about people not speaking truth to power, but speaking belief talking points to power, which is we have a different kind of problem, and which causes the erosion of truth to take place. So, I think in our next episode, what we could do is how do we, create a visionary future where truth gets to be rated and has a point of scale and has a life perspective to it that says, yeah, you're kind of right. It'd be nice if everybody followed just what you said, but that's not really a democracy. Yeah, it's really okay that, sometimes you just got to make a decision and make a mistake, and then make another decision and make a mistake, and make a decision and make a mistake, and then things get better. That's another way to do it. But you can, as a democracy, work with that. At least there is a progress or a willingness to collaborate and cooperate and come up with the best ideas. So we are in a very unique time, Tom. That's for sure. Who would have known?
Boy,
Jeez.
Yeah, shocking. Scary honesty is definitely the right way to think about it.
Yeah, really, really is. All right. Well, Tom, thanks a million. Thanks everybody for listening. And until the next time, keep your eyes open for ways you can speak truth to people in a safe way. So
thanks, Bill.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to this Purchasing Truth podcast. We trust that you have enjoyed this engaging and thought-provoking conversation. Our hope is that you've received value, found clarity, and broadened your truth perspective in this episode. If you did, leave us a review or visit our website, purchasingtruth.com. Join us again for another informative and content-rich discussion here at the Purchasing Truth podcast. Don't just accept whatever information comes your way. Join the discussion. Discover your own voice. Purchase your own truth.